and loneliness among American seniors. Americans have never had more opportunities for connection than we do today. But studies are repeatedly warning that feelings of isolation and loneliness are rising dramatically, especially among elderly Americans. This is a problem. Here's why it should matter to everyone in this room and the American people. The cycle of loneliness in seniors impacts all of us. And if we don't figure it out now, we are dooming future generations to suffer the same negative impacts of isolation. We can and must do better. Combating the feeling of isolation and loneliness for our aging community has endless benefits, from better mental and physical health to stronger multi-generational relationships with families and communities. Another benefit to reducing isolation and loneliness is that this is critical in our fight against scams. The internet and social media are great for many things, but when isolated and lonely seniors turn to the internet for companionship and social interaction, they are far more likely to become victims of scams. It's heartbreaking because this only fuels a cycle of negative outcomes for vulnerable older Americans. That's why last week I was proud to be joined by Senator Mark Kelly and several of our colleagues on the Aging Committee to introduce and pass a resolution designating March 6th as National Slam the Scam Day and working to raise awareness of scams targeting older Americans. Seniors have lost so much to scams, in many cases their identities or their life savings. Seniors are attacked with grandparent scams, financial services scams, tech support scams, government impersonation scams, romance scams, among others. All of these scams are even more effective with seniors who are struggling with loneliness, isolation, and depression. In 2023, people over 60 lost a combined $3.4 billion to fraud worldwide. We need to put an end to this. This is something that every American should be worried about. I know that every member of this committee wants to put an end to this critical issue. I'm glad that Pam Bondi is our Attorney General and Kash Patel is the Director of the FBI. I'm confident they will fight for every senior in our country and make sure that criminals are held accountable for their despicable crimes. Beyond preventing scams, tackling the issues associated with loneliness are key to my goal as chairman of this committee to improve the wellness of American seniors. I know the ranking member has the same goal. In our first meeting, I outlined 4 issues for this committee to focus on as we work to improve the wellness of America's seniors. One of these 4 issues was improving family and community support, and that is so important because when seniors feel they have purpose and are part of a community, they thrive. The sad reality we face today is that a growing number of senior citizens are suffering from mental and physical issues, largely driven by an epidemic of loneliness. Despite public health officials sounding the alarm, the issue has not yet been addressed through any major legislation. That is why I introduced the Social Engagement and Network Initiatives for Older Relief, or Senior Act, to address senior loneliness. I'm proud to have the support of Argentum, the Foundation for Social Connection Action Network, and the YMCA, who are all represented here today by our witnesses. The Senior Act has also been endorsed by Meals on Wheels. Finally, I think it's incredibly important to recognize the impact that COVID had on our seniors. Due to shutdowns and restrictions in places like hospitals, assisted living facilities, and nursing homes, many seniors weren't allowed to be near their children or grandchildren or any of their loved ones. In many cases, they were completely isolated to their own rooms. That's horrible. This was heartbreaking to see. We all know the importance of community and social interaction for our seniors and the great health benefits it has. We had so many seniors that weren't even allowed to have their loved ones next to them during their last time of need or their last moments on this earth. We all know that seniors contribute greatly when given opportunities to be active members in their communities. I hope to make significant progress on this issue to end loneliness and isolation among seniors, pass my Senior Act, and work together to improve the wellness of older Americans. I look forward to hearing your testimony and working with my colleagues on next steps to fight this issue. I'd now like to recognize Ranking Member Gillibrand for her opening statement.
Thank you, Chairman Scott, for calling today's hearing. Imagine growing old by yourself with no friends, no family, no loved ones around. I've seen it before, and it's really lonely. It's the reality of many of our seniors today. A heartbreaking 1 in 4 older Americans report being socially isolated, and 43% report feeling lonely. Loneliness and social isolation have detrimental consequences, increasing risks of early death, chronic disease, and dementia. This is not the kind of life that we want for our loved ones. It's not the kind of life we want for ourselves. The good news is there are many things we can do to reduce and prevent loneliness and social isolation. For example, home and congregate meals deliver both life-sustaining nutrition and social connection for older adults in their homes and community. Transportation programs allow adults with limited mobility to participate in community and social activities. There are also various innovative programs, such as intergenerational initiatives, that can help reduce social isolation. I look forward to working with my colleagues to support and strengthen programs that do reduce loneliness and social isolation for older adults. This includes protecting and strengthening critical federal funding for these programs, including in the Older Americans Act. I am proud to lead and support efforts to increase funding for the Older American Act programs, including the nutrition programs. I look forward to hearing from our witnesses today and to hear all the ways that we can help seniors stay engaged, connected, and integrated in their communities.
Thank you, Ranking Member Gillibrand. I'd now like to welcome our witnesses here today. Before I introduce our first witness, I'd like to ask each of you to be mindful of our limited time together today and keep opening statements to 5 minutes. First, I'd like to welcome Andrew McPherson. Mr. McPherson is the founder and board chair of the Foundation for Social Connection Action Network, an organization representing some of the most influential consumer groups, patient advocates, health plans, community-based organizations, behavioral health groups, and private sector innovators in the United States. Thank you for being here today, and please begin with your testimony.
Chairman Scott, Ranking Member Gillibrand, and distinguished members of the Aging Committee, thank you so much for the opportunity to testify today on the critical issue of loneliness among older adults. My name is Andrew McPherson, and I'm the founder and executive chair of the Foundation for Social Connection Action Network. Established in 2018, we convene a diverse multi-sector coalition of national organizations to develop and advocate for federal policy solutions that address the epidemic of social isolation and loneliness in America. Since our establishment, the Action Network has been honored to play an important role in supporting and advising the policy efforts of Congress on a bipartisan basis, as well as the executive branch. Chairman Scott, thank you for your leadership in authoring the Bipartisan Social Engagement and Network Initiatives for Older Relief, or Senior Act, which underscores the role that the Older Americans Act plays in addressing loneliness. While significant progress has been made here in Congress, of course, our work on this issue is far from over. As you know, social isolation and loneliness among older adults has reached epidemic proportions with devastating combined effects on public health, healthcare costs, and individual well-being. According to the National Academies, 24% of Americans aged 65 and older are considered to be socially isolated, 43% of adults aged 60 and older report feeling lonely, and chronic loneliness is linked to a 50% increased risk of dementia, 29% increased risk of heart disease, and 32% risk of stroke. Beyond its impact on an individual's health, social isolation and loneliness among older adults carries a substantial economic burden to our country as well. AARP, a member of our coalition, estimates that Medicare spends an additional $6.7 billion annually on socially isolated older adults due to increased hospitalizations, emergency room visits, and over-reliance on long-term care services. Chairman Scott and Ranking Member Gillibrand, I have included much more comprehensive analysis in my written testimony submitted to the committee. Fortunately, there are a number of ways that Congress can ameliorate loneliness and its deleterious impacts on older adults' health and well-being. First, pass the Senior Act. Adding the term loneliness to the Older Americans Act will allow and direct those funds to ensure older adults are more socially connected. Second, and as you know, the Older Americans Act serves as a vital cornerstone for aging services, but demands far exceed available resources. By increasing funding for Older Americans Act nutrition programs and community-based resources like senior centers, older adults can access structured opportunities for socialization, supporting their overall well-being. Additionally, targeted funding for rural aging interventions is essential to address isolation and loneliness in areas with limited transportation resources. The Administration for Community Living's Commit to Connect program, which Congress created, is just one example of an evidence-based model that can enhance and that should be protected and expanded. Third, strengthening and expanding intergenerational initiatives, such as shared housing programs, mentorship opportunities, and community volunteer projects, have proven to significantly reduce loneliness across generations. To strengthen these bonds, evidence-based strategies can be implemented to include socially friendly environments, expanding community programs that connect diverse age groups, and investing in local institutions that serve intergenerational hubs. Fourth, we must promote technology access in this country for seniors. While technology holds significant potential to mitigate loneliness, nearly 22 million older adults today lack broadband access. To bridge this gap, leveraging telehealth, assisted devices, online support groups, and expanded broadband access are truly necessary to address this issue. And finally, of course, Medicare plays a critically important role here in the growing crisis to address the growing crisis of loneliness and isolation as well. Medicare can, for example, ensure that the annual wellness visit includes routine screenings for loneliness, expand coverage for peer supports and hearing aids, support non-emergency transportation opportunities through Medicare Advantage and other non-medical supports that can enhance social connection and build social capital. In addition to these recommendations today I'm proud to announce the launch of our organization's federal policy priorities for social connection, a comprehensive framework comprising a full 130 policy recommendations designed to foster social connection and end the public health crisis. Chairman Scott, Ranking Member Gillibrand, and members of this committee, the Aging Committee, addressing the epidemic of loneliness among older adults is not only a moral imperative, but it is a critical public health and economic necessity in this country. Together, we can build a future where connection, not loneliness, defines the American experience for seniors. Thank you so much for the opportunity to testify today. I look forward to your questions. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. McPherson. Now I'd like to welcome James Balda. Mr. Balda is the President and CEO of Argentum, the leading national trade association serving companies that own, operate, and support professionally managed senior living communities. Under his leadership, they have focused on critical advocacy and action to support seniors. Thanks for being here today. Please begin with your testimony.
Chairman Scott, Ranking Member Gillibrand, and members of the committee. Excuse me. Chairman Scott, Ranking Member Gillibrand, and members of the committee, thank you for this opportunity. My name is James Balda, President and CEO of Argentum, the leading national association representing senior living, including independent living, assisted living, and memory care, where over 2 million seniors are overwhelmingly satisfied with calling our communities home. Argentum commends you, Senator, and Senator Smith and Senator Warnock on the introduction of the Senior Act and for holding this important hearing. You all know, which is why we're here today, that loneliness is an epidemic among our nation's elderly. As many as 50% experience it, and the physical, mental, and cognitive consequences can be devastating and overwhelming, particularly for those with some form of dementia. The toll of loneliness impacts an individual's quality of life and adds an ever-escalating cost to our healthcare system. As has already been mentioned, the former Surgeon General outlined the health consequences of loneliness. And the Harvard-Stanford AARP study also recognized the costs of that loneliness. The Alzheimer's Association has identified that loneliness increases the risk of dementia by over 50%, which in turn translates to over $230 billion in Medicare and Medicaid expenses annually, which is projected to increase by over 200% by 2050. And while these data points are staggering, the personal impact is often tragic, reducing the quality of life for seniors and putting a strain on caregivers and loved ones. But there is a common sense solution, offering seniors greater opportunities for support and engagement. Socialization is a crucial aspect of healthy aging. It promotes a sense of purpose and connection with others and significantly improves the mental, cognitive, and physical health of seniors. We see this every day in senior living communities, where residents become friends and friends ultimately become family. Our assisted living model, which is predominantly private pay and supports all activities of daily living, was created to allow seniors to thrive. It strives to recognize the importance of dignity, choice, and community to keep them living as independently for as long as possible and providing them with a sense of purpose and belonging, and providing them with a wide range of social and interactive activities, such as gardening, educational programs, tours, exercise classes, book clubs, and so much more. The social atmosphere of assisted living actually decreases loneliness. A national survey of more than 130,000 assisted living residents based on the UCLA loneliness score identified that just 14% of seniors identify themselves as being lonely living in an assisted living community, compared to nearly 30% in the broader community. Just yesterday, U.S. News reported that about 2/3 of seniors said loneliness or isolation contributed to a decline in their health before they moved into a senior living community, but that 61% of residents say their feelings of loneliness or isolation improved after moving in. Mr. Chairman, we believe our communities offer many opportunities for seniors to combat loneliness, but we know more can be done and more needs to be done outside the four walls of our buildings. That's why Argentum commends you on taking the important step of introducing the Senior Act. This bill will take critical steps to address the epidemic of senior loneliness by promoting key programs specifically designed to support seniors. Additionally, the requirement to direct the Secretary of HHS to focus on the importance of multi-generational relationships to mental health and loneliness is incredibly significant. Argentum is also pleased to support House Resolution 1812, the Care Across Generations Act, a bipartisan bill that will create opportunities for intergenerational connection through the establishment of a grant program for assisted living and long-term care settings to co-locate a child care facility with the senior community. We believe the benefits to both seniors and children will be invaluable. And I can speak firsthand to the value of intergenerational programs, whether it's the experiences my children have shared volunteering in a senior living community or through stories told to me by my wife about one of her first jobs working in a preschool adjacent to an assisted living community. And then there's the benefits of pet therapy, when Buttercup and Sugar Plum, two golden retrievers, visit a memory care center in Maryland and bring the room and residents to life. Or the impact of music therapy on Mary, a lifelong Beatles fan who today is often nonverbal until Let It Be starts playing and she's quickly leading the room in song. And the World War II veteran who became isolated after losing mobility, but after moving into a community, making friends, and accessing physical therapy, received a new lease on life. While these are just a few stories I can share today, these stories are commonplace in our communities. Mr. Chairman, thank you for the hearing and for taking the first steps to break the cycle of loneliness. And we look forward to working with you and the committee on this and other critical issues.
Thank you, and thank you for what your companies do for seniors. Now I'd like to welcome Suzanne McCormick. She is the President and CEO of YMCA of the USA, the National Resource Office for the Y. Everyone, of course, knows the YMCA, operating in 10,000 communities across all 50 states, D.C., and Puerto Rico. The YMCA is a key community partner in combating senior loneliness. Thanks for being here today, and we look forward to your testimony.
Chairman Scott, Ranking Member Gillibrand, and other distinguished members of the committee, I want to thank you for inviting me today. I am here representing the 2,600 YMCAs which serve 10,000 communities across our country. I am grateful for the opportunity to share the story of how they connect and support our older adults every day. At the Y, our mission is to strengthen communities by connecting people of all ages, abilities, and backgrounds to their potential, their purpose, and each other. This has been at the core of who we are for 175 years. But today, we know that so many people are struggling to make these life-changing connections, especially our seniors. 40% of adults say they feel lonely sometimes or even more than that. And the mortality rate of being socially disconnected is similar to the impact of smoking 15 cigarettes a day, which is greater than the impact associated with obesity and inactivity. The health risks for our older adults are heightened even more because they are more likely to feel isolated and disconnected than younger Americans. A bright spot, however, at the Y, older adults find the support and meaningful relationships they need to feel connected and healthy. YMCAs engage 17 million Americans every year, and nearly 4 million are over age 55. Almost 2.5 million are over 65. Seniors make up 1/4 of our members. A few years ago, the Y partnered with NORC at the University of Chicago to find out if older adults report better quality of life and social connectedness when they visit our facilities and participate in our programs. Results of this study showed significant increases in overall well-being and social connectedness. They also showed a decrease in loneliness and improvements in social well-being, spiritual well-being, physical health, and mental health. The results were even better for older adults who were able to engage more frequently in their why. Our programs not only help participants build friendships and connections that we all need to thrive, but they also help prevent, delay, or control chronic disease. Thanks to a 20-year partnership with CDC, the Y is the leading in-person provider of evidence-based chronic disease prevention and management programs, which address issues like diabetes, hypertension, arthritis, falls, and cancer. These programs have been proven to improve health outcomes and quality of life, and they often save healthcare dollars. In fact, the Y is recognized for its work with the Centers for Medicare and Medicaid Innovation. During a national study of 8,000 Medicare recipients, the YMCA's Diabetes Prevention Program saved $2,650 per participant while preventing or delaying diabetes among the majority of participants. The Y is also the leading provider of Medicare Advantage fitness benefits, larger than the next 7 providers combined. But for as much as we are able to accomplish on our own because of our national scale and community-level credibility, the Y is always looking to maximize our impact through partnerships. In communities across the country, YMCAs collaborate with partners like senior centers, libraries, and places of worship to reach and engage more seniors. The Y looks forward to also partnering with the Select Committee on Aging to improve both physical and emotional well-being of our nation's older adults. We urge Congress to continue supporting the highest level of funding for the CDC to help the Y innovate our evidence-based chronic disease prevention and control programs, to uphold Medicare Advantage's ability to offer supplemental benefits like fitness and socialization opportunities, and enable Medicaid to help low-income seniors improve their physical and mental health by helping them access the Y and our evidence-based programs. Every dollar invested in community-based organizations like YMCA's, organizations that are trusted and have on-the-ground credibility, pays a dividend in the form of improved health and wellness, especially for our older adults. There are 1,000 stories I could share, but I'll leave you with just a few. There's Pam from Palm Harbor, Florida. Her husband passed away, she lost her home in a hurricane, and she has become a caregiver for her adult son. She called it the darkest period of her life and said she didn't even want to get out of bed in the morning. At the Y, she found friendly people and opportunities to engage and get active. She says it's the best thing she's ever done for herself. In Phoenix, 86-year-old Gloria has a new bestie. That's what she calls Lisa, a volunteer with the Y's outreach program for aging seniors. Each week, they go grocery shopping, they get their hair done, and they have lunch together. Gloria says this relationship helps her stay active and feel young. And lastly, serving so many older adults creates employment opportunities for them as well. Althea and Oscar, both in their 80s, work part-time at their Y. She works at the front desk. He is a greeter who gives tours and manages the coffee bar. These jobs, they say, help them find fulfillment and purpose in their lives. And on a personal note, I've had the great privilege of meeting 3 Y members who bragged to me about celebrating their 100th birthday with friends and family at their local Y. Their Y in Athens, Georgia, Kansas City, Missouri, and Anchorage, Alaska. It still warms my heart to remember the joy on their faces when they told me all their friends who turned out to celebrate with them at their Y. This is the magic of creating places, experiences, and opportunities for people to genuinely connect with each other. This is the magic of the Y. This is the magic our seniors need more than ever. In closing, there are YMCAs in every state represented by the members of this committee that are helping older adults stay engaged and healthy every day. I'd be happy to share examples and submit them as part of the record today. Again, Ys across the country want to be your partner. Thank you for the opportunity today, and thank you for your leadership.
Thank you. We'll take those and put them in the record.
Thank you.
Without objection. But thank you for being here. Next, I'd like to recognize Ranking Member Gillibrand to introduce the next witness.
I'd like to give Senator Warnock the privilege since she is from Georgia.
Thank you, Ranking Member Gillibrand. Thank you, Chair Scott. So grateful that we're hosting this hearing today on such an important issue, this issue of loneliness. I look forward to our continued partnership and work, including by passing the Senior Act to address this issue. But while I'm working in the Senate to improve access to these programs, I am in awe of how Georgians back home are stepping up every day to serve their communities. Grateful for the work that we get to do here, but it's really the folks on the ground who are the tip of the spear. So today I am so very proud to introduce a Georgian, Ms. Tori Straughter-Tanks. Tori has served as Director of Clayton County Senior Services for the past 12 years. As Director, Tori oversees 5 centers and manages the Clayton County Aging Program, which provides essential services to seniors, including home-delivered meals and transportation. Beyond her role in Clayton County, she is the president and founder of the Georgia Association of Senior Centers. So someone who has long been committed to this work. Tori, thank you for the work that you do every day for seniors all across our state, but particularly in Clayton County. And we're all very, very grateful that you're here today to share your experience and your perspective.
Thank you so much for that introduction. Thank you for the opportunity to speak before you today. I am Tori Straughter-Tanks, and I have the privilege of serving as Director of Senior Services in Clayton County, Georgia. And as Senator Warnock said, I am the president of the Georgia Association of Senior Centers. I'm honored to be here today to discuss a critical issue facing older adults across the country: social isolation and the vital role senior centers and other aging programs play in combating it. Senior centers are hubs of high-impact exercise, cultural engagement, physical wellness, and lifelong learning. The Older Americans Act, it contributes funding to senior centers and other important aging services. And protecting that funding is critical to ensuring that older adults continue to have access to the services that I have spent over half of my life carrying out. Across Georgia and throughout the nation, senior centers provide vital programs that enhance the lives of older adults, keeping them socially engaged and supporting their overall well-being. These programs include health, wellness, aquatic, technology, fitness classes, lifelong learning, theatrical productions, cultural arts programs, trips, and also evidence-based programs. These programs play a vital role in improving seniors' physical health, reducing fall risk, preventing chronic disease, enhancing mental well-being, fostering creativity, promoting social engagement, strengthening community connections, and bridging the generational digital divide. At Frank Bailey Senior Center in Riverdale, Georgia, we saw firsthand the extraordinary potential of older adults when Miss Dorothy Steele, who started acting at the age of 80. Miss Steele, she took the stage and she was a Hollywood sensation. She went on to become a Hollywood sensation, starring as a tribal elder in Marvel's Black Panther and Black Panther 2, Wakanda Forever, proving that dreams do not have expiration dates. Miss Steele has appeared in several other movies. You can Google her to see her entire amazing body of work. Her story is a testament to the power of senior centers to unlock potential and rewrite the narrative of aging. Another essential service that senior centers provide is congregate meals. For many older adults, these meals aren't just about food, you see. They are about connection, dignity, and community. Congregate meals ensure that seniors receive balanced, nutritious food, reducing the risk of malnutrition and diet-related illnesses. They combat isolation by providing opportunities for older adults to gather, talk, and form meaningful relationships. For some seniors, this may be the only hot meal they receive in a day. Without adequate funding for congregate meal programs, like these provided by the Older Americans Act, too many older adults risk going hungry or becoming further isolated. Along the same line, home-delivered meals also provide nutritious food, social interaction, and wellness checks for older adults who may not be able to leave their homes. These services are especially critical for those who are aging alone, without family or other community support. Additionally, transportation services provided through assistance from federal funding help seniors to get to their medical appointments, buy fresh and healthy foods at the grocery store, and to see their friends, rather than being isolated at home because they are not able to drive. Beyond their social and emotional benefits, senior centers and other aging programs save our economy billions of dollars annually. Research has shown that healthy, active seniors who participate in community-based programs reduce health care costs significantly, both for themselves and for taxpayers. And you know what? We cannot begin to overlook the sandwich generation. These are those that are caring for aging parents while supporting their children. As the senior population grows, working caregivers face mounting financial, emotional, and logistical challenges. When older adults stay active, healthy, and engaged, it eases the burden on their families. Without proper investment in senior centers and community-based services, caregiving falls heavily on adult children already juggling careers, finances, and family life. Access to social engagement, nutritious meals, health programs, and transportation supports not just seniors, but their families. It impacts workforce retention and the economy. Yet, despite their proven benefits, senior centers remain underfunded, leaving many older adults struggling with barriers like transportation, awareness, and the lack of investment. If we are really serious about combating senior isolation and improving public health, we must, 1, expand funding for senior centers and other aging services, improve transportation access, especially to those in rural areas, so older adults can actively participate in community life, strengthen digital inclusion for seniors so they can stay connected in a technology-driven world, recognize senior centers. I'm going to say this one more time. Recognize senior centers as essential infrastructures to support aging in place, health and well-being. Invest in meal programs to fight food insecurity, combat isolation, and promote nutrition for older adults. Support caregivers by ensuring seniors have access to services that promote independence. Social isolation is not just the individual problem, it's a public health crisis with consequences as severe as smoking and obesity. But senior centers and programs like congregate and home-delivered meals offer a proven solution, helping older adults not only stay socially engaged, but thrive in ways they never imagined. When we invest in senior centers, we are not just enriching lives, we are saving money, we are strengthening families, we are supporting working caregivers, and ensuring a better future for generations to come. Thank you for your time and commitment to this issue. I look forward to your questions and to working together to build a stronger and more connected future for our nation's seniors.
Thank you, Ms. Shelter-Tanks. And thanks for what you do. We have great senior centers down in Florida, and they're fun to go visit. So there's a lot of action. So now we'll go to the questions. Let's start with Senator Moody.
Thank you, Senator Scott and Ranking Member Gillibrand. We appreciate you holding this hearing. I think that the two of you in charge, I don't know that we've ever seen so much activity in this committee. I love it. It's been protecting seniors within the state of Florida, certainly while I was the Attorney General in the state of Florida, and growing up with a mother who dedicated her entire career to helping seniors, low-income seniors. This is an important committee, and this is an important hearing, and I appreciate all of you taking time to be here. Certainly, it is nice to see not only our sister state and neighbor state people from Georgia, but from Florida as well. It was so nice to see Ms. McCormick from Tampa Bay, which is my home. So it was great to see a friendly face being here only a little over a month. I crave folks from the Sunshine State coming up here. And I remind them when I left and came up here from the Sunshine State, so much leadership came up here to Washington that it snowed in Florida. It was crazy. This is a great hearing, and certainly the leadership of Senator Scott does not go unnoticed. He has always been one to dig into the details of really complex problems, and I've always admired that about him, not only as the governor of Florida, but certainly as a senator. What is remarkable to me is hearing from each of you, and each of you pointed out very significant ways we could address isolation of seniors, improve the health of seniors, and it touched a lot on funding. Protecting funding, certainly important. All of us on this committee understand that, but additional funding. And I know that so many of us, whether you're on the Republican side of the aisle or the Democratic side of the aisle, so many of us take very seriously this responsibility we have to make sure that the fiscal health of this nation isn't driven right off a cliff. And we've been seeing so much of that in the last few years with pandemic spending never returning to normalcy. We ramped it up during a time of emergency and was never backed off. And so many of us are struggling with, okay, we've got to face the reality of we have very limited taxpayer funds to work with. And as I'm hearing from each of you, the answer is, in many respects, one of your answers, I don't want to limit it to that, is funding. And what I've been so interested in, and yes, I understand that, and I'm glad that you're here, and I'm glad you're advocating for that. But what I've seen work so well throughout communities, including with organizations like the Y and others, is they've identified ways to combat problems that might not be asking for more money. For example, I heard about putting daycares, and I know that's attached to a grant, but the idea of putting a daycare within a senior living community and what that might do just by being creative and thinking outside the box and planning programs that put these two together in a way that might benefit both. I've seen high school seniors around the nation come up with community service projects, number one, to satisfy graduation rates, but also it looks really good to colleges when you're applying and showing what you do, that are creating programs to volunteer with seniors and programs to help them clean up or help take them places or volunteer at senior community centers. I think that not only helps the seniors and addresses isolation among our seniors, but I think in a young person's world where they are seeking validation and inspiration and teachings and modeling through an empty influence of social media, I think it's so great that they're now spending time with people who have lived a life and experienced the great joys of life and the tribulations and challenges of life and maybe have overcome them or can warn about downfalls or risks. So I think there is a mutually beneficial thing there too. And I'll start with you, Ms. McCormick. Are there any programs like that the Y is fostering that may not be asking for large amounts of money, but that are facilitating the communication or the creation of these outside-the-box programs so that both age groups, young and old, benefit?
Without question, and I do appreciate, it does feel often when any of us come to Washington, all we're asking for is money. I think one of the things I'd like to highlight as an example is in our universe of Ys, one of our strategies to increase services is through partnerships and often through public-private partnerships. So we see much more YMCAs around the country finding private partners, often they're healthcare providers, to come into their space and serve clients together. So leveraging resources that exist in the community outside of government funding. I think that is something that we have to continue to push for, and we definitely see that in regards to serving seniors. The other nugget I heard in your is community service, and without question, we're an organization that's built on volunteerism, so the ability to bring volunteers in to deliver, but it's a balance, and I think that's what we're all striving for, is what is the way that we can all contribute something so that we can leverage our gifts and what we can bring to achieve shared outcomes?
Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you, Senator Moody. Now I recognize Ranking Member Gillibrand.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I really appreciate everyone's testimony. Thank you so much for being experts in this and caring so much about our older adults. I really, really appreciate it. Ms. Strotter-Tanks, the goal, first of all, thank you so much for being here and testifying. In your testimony, you mentioned that you run various senior centers, which are the setting for the congregate meals. Can you describe the ways congregate meals have improved the health of and reduced social isolation for older adults in your centers? And where do you get your funding for congregate meals? And are there any innovative ways to fund congregate meals that you've thought of?
Yes. So inside of our senior centers, we offer congregate meals. And right now, our congregate meal program is funded through the Older Americans Act funding. And our seniors, they also receive transportation to get to our centers to get congregate meals. And so right now, we are exploring ways that we can come up with better ideas to provide meals to them, because we have faced issues where funding has been cut. Our county is an amazing county, and our county supplements our congregate meal programs whenever there are cuts or fluctuations with the budget. And so right now, we're just really exploring how we can be prepared in case something happens where we can't provide those congregate meals. But our congregate meal clients, they come to our center, and they also receive some form of case management where our staff is actually meeting with them and talking to them and finding out what their needs are, because sometimes it is a little bit more than just the meal. But we do know that the meal is really important for our clients that come for congregate meals.
And would you imagine if we asked people who are of SNAP benefits, if you could use your EBT card to pay for congregate meals? Do you think that would be a useful opportunity for settings that offer it?
I think that would be an amazing setting, especially in our senior centers. Our senior centers have full cafeterias where we have a contract with, local restaurants. And I think that would be a really great benefit if we could have that, because some of our seniors do not qualify for congregate meals. And so they do have to pay for their meals. But again, Clayton County does an amazing job with our senior centers. Our senior centers are not underfunded. They're actually funded very well. However, our meal program is kind of underfunded because we need more funds to provide services to those seniors who need meals.
And then, in New York, we have so many good, in God's Love We Deliver, we have Meals on Wheels, we have all these different types of organizations that are willing to bring homebound seniors a cooked meal at least once or twice a week. And what we've heard is that sometimes is the only person who's visited them all week. It's the only person who checks in on them to make sure they're okay, taking their medicine, have heat on in the apartment. What's your experience with home delivery of meals, and why is that important for your constituencies?
Home delivered meals are so important. It's even greater than just that human contact when the Meals on Wheels driver comes to the door. All of our seniors who receive home delivered meals also receive case management. So again, someone is actually talking to them, finding out what the need is, talking to them about are they having issues with falling? Do they need more than a meal? And just connecting them with resources. So it starts there. Once a Meals on Wheels driver is assigned to that senior, that Meals on Wheels driver is actually checking on them to make sure that everything is okay with the senior as well. And then in our county, we also do things around the holidays. We take Christmas food to them. We take turkeys to them. It's truly a collaboration of the community in our county. We pull together to make sure that those home delivered meal clients have everything that they need socially and beyond the meal.
Cormac, do you have a perspective on either of those two questions?
I do think that I was just thinking as I was hearing you talk, I was recalling a visit that I made to Buffalo, New York, actually, and it was on Halloween, and they did a congregate meal lunch on the gym floor of one of the Ys there in Buffalo, in a historically underserved community. And it was packed. And in addition to the food, which when I met with the staff and I heard, I think the benefits are always twofold. It's nutritional, first and foremost, but it is the ability to bring seniors together in a setting where they can be with each other, where they can make friends. And in this particular forum, they had an opportunity to meet with at least 4 of their public elected officials to talk about what was going on in the city of Buffalo. So I think it's always twofold. It's always about nutrition and making sure like that health aspect, physical health is being met, but as importantly, it's always about the social wellness that congregate feeding, or it's not feeding, it's congregate dining, because it's usually a very festive atmosphere. So I think, we see that too in the Y.
Thank you. Thank you both. Thank you all.
Senator Justice.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I haven't had the opportunity to be here. With different committees that we had to go to and everything, that I didn't hear your testimonies. I just caught the tail end of yours. It was great and everything. But I would like to say just this. I'm one of the new kids on the block. I'm a new kid that came here with white hair. And if you show up with white hair and you're a new kid, you're here for a reason other than just maybe some self-satisfying reason for yourself. You see, I don't want anything. I don't want a thing. But I can tell you what I really do want, but beyond anything for myself, is I want to do goodness. I want to do goodness absolutely for everybody that I can possibly touch. I meet up with being a patriot, but I read just this: breaking the cycle of senior loneliness, strengthening family and community support. I'm going to tell you just this. In my state of West Virginia, you see plenty of loneliness. I don't know how it gets any worse. That's all there is to it. Let me just say just this, and then I'll ask a couple real quick questions. Again, to me, our seniors need so much more than just contact with their seniors. At the end of the day, they need kids involved. They need animals involved, dogs. They absolutely need to be able to give of their wisdom. You see, there's so many out there that really want their wisdom. And they want to give it so bad, it's unbelievable, because they want to feel worth in what they're doing. Now, we can have lots and lots of meetings, and we can try to move the ball. But I am telling you just this from the bottom of my heart. If you're speaking of loneliness and you're speaking of our seniors, we got to do a lot more. We got to do a lot more than we're doing. Now, we can absolutely, and I hate to say this in any way, but we can just call them seniors. You're a senior. You're a senior. For God's sakes, living, I'm a senior. And before you know it, we become almost labeled or pigeonholed. I'm not a senior. I'm Jim Justice. They're individuals, and they should be loved and cherished in every single way. And we should be trying to help in every way. For God's sakes, a living, they've given us everything, everything. And they still stand ready to give us more. Again, I didn't hear your testimony. I can ask you a question like, all the things we hear about, whether it be the phones or the internet and everything, we hear negative about it. Can we use that in a way to really help us do better? And the last thing I'll tell you is just this, and I'll open up to you and let any of you that wants to answer the question answer it. But I would say to all of us, to our ranking member, to this great chairman, to all those that are on this committee that have come and gone and everything, I would say, net, we better get at doing more, because we're losing our knowledge. And for crying out loud, our seniors, that I wish to goodness we didn't even use that name, but our seniors are really wanting to give to all of us. They've already given so much. I say this to the military over and over, but our military of all, they absolutely give so much and ask so little. They've done it and done it and done it. We got to do something about it. So anyway, you don't have to answer my questions because I didn't hear your testimony. So anyway, but I love you for being here. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Senator Justice. Mr. McPherson, we know that criminals prey on lonely seniors, making them more susceptible to fraud and scams. Can you speak to the connection between social isolation and the increased risk of being targeted or falling victim to scams?
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, thank you for the question. And it's a significant issue in this country. Studies show that socially isolated seniors are twice as likely to fall victim to scams compared to those with more regular social connections. And that's why holding this hearing is so critically important here in the U.S. Senate. Loneliness is linked to 40% increased risk of cognitive decline, as we know, which leads older adults to be more susceptible in this country. I do want to go back to the Older Americans Act. You know, a fraction of the federal budget. You know, it's a fairly small amount of money, but high impact dollars. And a critically important component of the Older Americans Act, of course, is focusing on elder abuse and protecting our seniors. So we want to make sure that we continue that funding, that we reauthorize the Older Americans Act. I also think, you know, the previous Surgeon General, Dr. Vivek Murthy, really took this issue on and released a report in 2023 that our organization was very much involved with. We sort of, he put an idea forward that we should have connection in all policies, right? So whether it be healthcare policy, whether it be labor, pick your poison, we need to infuse connection in everything that we're doing in this country. And Senator Justice, that's the only way that we're going to have a comprehensive solution to a very complex problem. Thank you for the question, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Mr. Baldwin. Florida, like our three states, have a huge senior population. So naturally, there are larger amounts of senior living communities. What is one clear link between senior living communities and healthy aging?
Thank you for that question, Mr. Chairman. When you think about what goes on in our buildings, at its heart, it's social determinants of health. It's nutrition, it's physical activity, it's mental and cognitive activity, it's socialization, and it's all of that 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. And that has enormous benefit to the health outcomes of the residents that live in our buildings. A study done by NORC, you had mentioned NORC earlier, took a look at the frailty of individuals right before they moved into our communities and right after they moved into our communities, and then over a period of time. And what they found was right before they moved in, they were on a decline, and that persisted for a short period of time after they moved in, but then it leveled off, and over the next several months, it started to improve in terms of their frailty. And that's because of the activity and the engagements we do on a regular basis. And I think the issue we need to figure out, and there were questions earlier about, you know, funding and such, we're predominantly a private pay model. And I think as a country, we need to figure out how to help more seniors access that model, whether it's in the four walls of our building or it's in their own private residence. We think a lot about what we call sort of the forgotten middle of seniors in this country, the seniors that don't qualify for Medicaid and might not quite be able to pay for the current assisted living product. And we estimate that there's going to be more than 16 million of those in the coming decades. And so how are they going to get the care and the services they need? How are they going to get access to the nutrition and the physical activity? And we think there's a lot that we can do to support that. We just need to be able to identify a model that is actually affordable for those individuals. There's also the concern that we have about workforce in the long term and who's going to care for all of these seniors. But we've proven that our model works. It saves Medicare money, it saves Medicaid money. And I think there's much more that we can do to get those types of services and supports to more seniors in the country.
Thank you. Ms. McCormick, with your experience being president of YMCA, what real-life instances of physical health linking to mental health and reducing loneliness among seniors have you seen?
Well, I will share a Tampa example with you because we've already had the Florida love today. You know, it's very hard not to see the connection when you go into a Y. The seniors that I encountered have such a vibrancy and an energy to them. And one of the first people I met when I took this job, which was about 3.5 years ago, he reached out to me on LinkedIn. His name is Danny Ferry. He's a retired Army veteran, and he had been actively participating in the Y in a swim program to rehabilitate a knee injury. And so his initial engagement with the Y was around a health benefit. But he fell in love with the sense of belonging that it offered him. It gave him a place to go and feel like he could make friends. He's become an Uber volunteer with the Y. We held a large national fundraising conference down in Tampa about 3 years ago, and every day he was there dressed as a pirate with a parrot on his shoulder, serving as a greeter and giving directions. And he continues to reach out to me and tell me that the Y gave him a second chance after having just an incredible career in the Army and then transitioning out. He now has a sense of purpose. And so what I see every time I go into a Y, we see seniors who come in potentially with the goal of working on their health or their physical activity. Well, those are often the same thing. But the added benefit from their participation is that they're seen as people and they make friends and they have a joyful time. And those two things go hand in hand in almost every case I've seen. I could tell you story after story of senior. You walk into a Y at around 10:30, they'll either be in the pool exercising as a group, they'll either be doing chair aerobics, or they will be socializing around the coffee clutch after they're done with their activities. Sometimes it's hard to get them out of the Y just because they want to stay. We have our own version of a senior center some days.
So give me what are some of your important programs you think impact seniors?
Some of our chronic disease prevention programs, we have programs that focus on arthritis mitigation. Diabetes prevention is one of our strongest signature programs. We have incredible results in that program. We have blood pressure self-monitoring program. We have a cancer survivorship program. And we also have many Ys who participate in falls prevention training with seniors. So it really covers the gamut of chronic disease, the whole portfolio of chronic diseases many Ys are participating in. And I would say almost every Y in Florida is very engaged in that work.
Ms. Schroeder-Tanks, can you give me some stories of how the seniors' activity in one of your centers has impacted, reduced the cost of Medicare and Medicaid?
Yes. So inside our senior centers, we have wonderful opportunities. The average age of our staff inside our senior centers is around 50 or 55. So seniors actually come to our centers looking for social engagement, looking for a meal, and some of them actually receive an employment opportunity inside our senior centers. All of our exercise programs inside our seniors are high impact, which actually improves their quality of life. We do fall prevention classes. We do evidence-based classes. We do, it's a whole gambit of different activities and programs that we provide to keep seniors socially engaged and to improve the quality of life and their health.
Thanks. Mr. McPherson, what can we do to strengthen community ties and protect seniors from these bad actors?
There's a lot we can do. The community-based interventions that we've heard some of them here today are just critically important. I think we need to take a settings approach, Mr. Chairman, to this issue, whether you're talking about health centers, community centers, housing, schools, workplaces, places of worship. Our 130 policy recommendations that we just released today addresses all of those settings and ideas for the federal government, but also states to invest in a comprehensive approach to a really challenging problem. Again, going back to the Older Americans Act, it's just critically important that we protect that funding, expand that funding. It's a drop in the bucket in the federal budget that has a outsized impact on seniors across the country. The last thing I'll say is that we've touched on intergenerational today, but I think it's worth emphasizing that. Ranking Member Gillibrand, you have an extraordinary program in your state, DeRote, which is a member of our steering committee, that receives funding from the Older Americans Act and private sources as well, that has a whole range of intergenerational programming that has been very successful in not just addressing social isolation and loneliness, but also addressing the well-being of the communities that they serve. So this is a complex issue, and there's a lot of different ways to address it. At the Foundation for Social Connection Action Network, again, we've got almost 70 national organizations involved in our work to come together to find to a whole range of solutions. So thank you for the question.
So you've had 20 years of work in the healthcare policy space. What do you think is the most effective, or one of the most effective, I'm sure there's a lot, of initiatives that combat loneliness among seniors?
Yeah, I really appreciate that question. 20 years.
Is that true?
Look, it is true. Thank you for saying that. My hairline says it.
Have some.
I'll say raising the visibility of this issue is the most important aspect from my perspective, and this hearing is a critically important way to do that. Look, there's still a lot of stigma in this country around being socially isolated and or lonely. The way that we break down those barriers and allow people to be more connected at a very fundamental level is to talk about it. So that's number one. Number two, as I said, the former Surgeon General, I think, did an extraordinary job in raising the visibility of this issue and releasing a number of really thoughtful reports, went all over the country and talked about this. I'll give you some more specifics, though, in healthcare policy, Mr. Chairman. Medicare Advantage. In 2018, Congress passed the Chronic Act, okay? And the Chronic Act was widely bipartisan, and what it did was allow Medicare Advantage plans in supplemental benefits to offer non-medical benefits, things like nutrition services, home-based palliative care, non-emergency transportation. If I think back over 20 years of doing this work, that was critically important. As Medicare Advantage was growing in the program, it was critically important that Congress gave them, and the Trump administration at the time as well, gave the plans the opportunity to provide benefits that were non-medical in nature. We would love to see that expanded. We would love to see hearing reimbursement, for example, for hearing devices, and hearing moved into original Medicare, which would create more space in supplemental benefits for more non-medical approaches. So those are just some examples, Mr. Chairman, of things that I've seen over the years that I think have been really impactful.
Do you think the Senior Acts would help groups that you work with fight loneliness?
I mean, look, absolutely. So the previous reauthorization of the Older Americans Act in 2020 added the word social isolation. This is before the pandemic, by the way. Added the word social isolation to the Older Americans Act and attached about $250 million for ACL to implement programming. That programming was wildly successful and I would argue saved the federal government money. By adding loneliness, Mr. Chairman, that allows the resources in the Older Americans Act and senior centers, nutrition programs, et cetera, to direct funding at the public health epidemic and crisis. So we are 100% supportive. We're excited to see it, to advocate for it and get more co-sponsors, and we're eager to see it pass the Congress.
Ranking Member Gillibrand, do you have some questions?
Mr. Balda, can you talk a little bit about the role that insurance companies play in helping our seniors? Can you talk a little bit about what do you feel healthcare companies could do to help communities congregate care settings, ensure older adults are less isolated, and address maybe any of the issues we've been talking about from the insurance perspective?
Sure, absolutely, and thank you for the question. Unfortunately, over the last several years, we've seen the long-term care insurance market decline. And I think if there is a way for us to determine how to shore that market up so that more people can have access to long-term care insurance policies, that can help support the isolation issue in the long term in terms of giving them access to supports and services, whether it's in their private residence or whether it's in one of our communities. I think programs like the YMCA has in terms of getting physical engagement for those that live outside of our settings and are supported through Medicare Advantage plans and things of that sort are incredibly helpful. Our communities already offer a lot of that just directly within their four walls in terms of activities in our pools and activities in our gym centers and yoga for seniors and such. But anything insurance companies can do to offer supports and services like the Silver Sneakers program as one example would be incredibly helpful. But I really think figuring out a way to shore up the long-term care insurance market would be incredibly helpful so that people people can access those supports and services in any setting.
Thank you. Mr. McPherson, you touched upon intergenerational programs to reduce loneliness. Can you talk about which ones are most effective, what makes them effective, how they're funded, and what suggestions you have for this committee?
They're funded from a whole range of sources, but as I said, the Older Americans Act is a critical source of funding. You know, they really run the gamut. I'd love to submit for the record some case studies, Senator Gillibrand, of some of the most effective programming, and meet with your staff about that and kind of walk you through it. I know that DeRote, for example, has the Genuine Connections program, which is actually a virtual volunteer program for teens and adults over the age of 65, where they run workshops through Zoom and have social connectivity through that, chess, art, et cetera. I'm the son of a hospice volunteer. I think that the hospice volunteer model could be a very effective way that we have in communities across the country, could be a very effective way to address social isolation and loneliness, not just for seniors, but also for younger populations as well. So we've got an infrastructure out there. The question is, how do we leverage it in a thoughtful way?
Well, one of the ideas that my 16-year-old son had was they have 10 hours of public service required every year at their school. So we came up with an idea that him and his friends would visit the local senior center and just spend hours upon hours getting to know different seniors and being part of their lives. I also thought about this risk that our seniors fear and are subjected to all day long, which is the scams, the digital scams, the phone scams, the online scams, the clicking the wrong button. I think our young people would be so helpful in creating digital awareness, digital hygiene for our older people, because they're so native and they can explain, certainly my sons explain to my mother all the time what not to click on and why. I think that could be the future of a great partnership. But I do hope you'll keep exploring that, and we'd be delighted to receive your testimony and the studies, because I think that intergenerational connection, a lot of our kids during COVID became deeply disconnected. They missed 2-3 whole years of maturity and development, and I think our seniors could help our younger people learn how to be more connected and learn how to, don't look at your phone, talk to your friend. What are you missing in those social interactions? I think the wisdom that our older generation has is extremely meaningful. So I appreciate the work you do there. And then last, for Suzanne, I just wanted to ask you one more question about falls and social isolation. Every senior that I've talked to is worried about falling. So they buy the best sneakers, they try to take small steps, but they're very afraid to go out when the weather's bad. They're afraid if they've had a fall, they don't want to go out at all. I know a lot of older people who won't drive at night, a lot of older people who won't engage at all at night because they're afraid of falling. And this is a question for anybody, actually. If you have any ideas about how do we prevent falls, how do we prevent fear, and how do we build confidence and allow for social interactions so that they don't not engage because of that fear?
Excuse me, thank you for the question. I'll start by building on something Mr. McPherson said. I think part of the challenge and the opportunity before us is awareness about the opportunities to learn about falls prevention. In New York State, I'm happy to say that our YMCAs are engaged in a 4-year plan to enroll over 2,500 New Yorkers in fall prevention programs. So we have the capability, but we have to create greater awareness and reduce the stigma. And I think the Y wants to be a helpful partner in being that place where seniors feel like it's safe to come in the summer months or the fall months to learn falls prevention so that they can continue to come. I do know, like the hard winters in the Northeast. But we are making progress in New York. I said it's a 4-year plan. We have 40 new instructors, and they're going to be taking the falls prevention program outside of the Ys where seniors are meeting, so into senior centers, churches, and other community locations. So we hope this will prove to be a good model that we can meet seniors where they are. I think that's probably one of our great opportunities, not expecting them to come to us. And so we look forward to reporting back to you on the work that's happening in New York that hopefully can be scaled in across the country. But I think it's when we get to seniors, when they participate in the program, when they can learn falls prevention, we can take that fear away, and then they can engage in ongoing social connection activities with other community members.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Senator Justice.
Well, I'll end really quickly on my part. And Mr. Chairman, thank you, sir. And I'll just say just this. In West Virginia, we value families like you can't imagine. And absolutely the foundational part of our families and our culture is our families. There's no question whatsoever. Now, let me just go back just a second and just say just this. You know, there was a few years ago that in West Virginia, I always call the voters Toby and Edith. And I would say just this, that, and this reflects on loneliness, but let's say Aunt Edith wants to have a picnic and she wants all of her grandkids to be there. And we were in a situation in West Virginia a few years back where, to be perfectly honest, many folks left that had those kids because they had to go someplace else to find a job. And absolutely, if you haven't seen the ramifications of loneliness, then you've really missed something, because it's sadness beyond belief. I really think just this, that we're plenty smart enough to solve this riddle. We're not doing enough. We've got to go back to what I said just a little while ago. We've got to get kids involved. We've got to get dogs involved. We've got to, I mean, for God's sakes, a living, you just think. Now, many of you probably don't know this, but if you know who Baby Dog is, honest to goodness, I can't tell you the number of places that I've gone to senior centers that absolutely, they don't care about me being there. They wanted Baby Dog to be there. You know, absolutely, I tell you, we can solve this riddle. And all of us, and if we don't, shame on us, all of us should be willing to take a blood oath that we're going to fix it. We're going to fix this. I mean, there is so much that can be done. And absolutely, again, if you have not seen and felt and touched loneliness, then absolutely you have been very lucky, because it is sadness like you can't imagine. So all I would say is just this. My question would be, what can we do? What can we do beyond? I mean, I know your answer is going to be, you know, it's almost like you go in a restaurant and say, you know, the waitress comes over and says, "Sir, how do you like your eggs? Do you like your eggs scrambled or fried?" And you say, "Yes." Absolutely, in this situation, we've got to say yes to all these ways to make things better. These people have given so much, it's off the chart. And so I want to listen real quickly if anybody on the panel wants to take the question, but my question would be just centered around, you know, in West Virginia, those values are unbelievable. Tell me anything and everything you can possibly tell me in a matter of just a few seconds that'll make it better. Please, any of you.
Thank you, Senator, for that question and those sentiments. And love the idea of pets, and just, you know, almost all of our communities allow pets, and in most cases, either the residents have pets or the communities themselves have pets, which then become pets for everybody else in the building.
No, Baby Dog's not a pet.
Well, exactly. Fantastic point.
I mean, Baby Dog's one of us.
But they bring any animal, right? Brings life to the
100%.
entire community, and it's things like that, and it's things like music therapy, and it's the intergenerational, you know, connections that we've been talking about. And I think there is not a single solution to this crisis. I think there's elements of a solution among all of us here, all serving sort of different parts of the community. and learning from each other and what works and what doesn't, I think is a tremendous opportunity. And even before we started, we were sort of sharing ways to potentially partner with each other on some things. And Senator Gillibrand, back to your question about falls, you know, I think that's a terrible concern for seniors, and I see it in my loved ones. And I can only tell you in our communities, you know, one of the first things that happens when somebody comes in, they go through an assessment. And oftentimes we identify that it's been lack of nutrition, lack of exercise, needs some physical therapy. Oftentimes it's medication, on too many medications, and having to adjust that regimen. But it goes beyond that. It's also the setting in which they live, and does it have the right flooring? Does it have the appropriate lighting? And so there's a whole host of those, regardless of whether they live in our buildings or others. But I think technology is also a crucial role in that as well, in terms of being able to identify when somebody's fallen if they live on their own. I can tell you personally, my mom was an hour away from me, and she fell, and she sat there until I could come and pick her up because she was too proud to call for help. And so it's a terrible a need that we need to fill, and we're part of the solution, and I think all of us here are part of the solution. And I commend you for this hearing and bringing us all together to work on it together. So thank you.
Senator, I would respond and say, I think you've heard today, you've heard a lot of tactical activities, things that we can do to provide, but I think what you've said that's touched me is this is about cultural recommitment to a belief in our responsibility to seniors. At the Y, we have 4 core values. They're caring, honesty, respect, and responsibility. And I think this committee has a huge opportunity to continue to elevate the responsibility that every American has to every American person who happens to be over the age of 55 or 60, I won't say older adult or seniors, but I think it's an opportunity, again, for us to raise awareness and recommit to the responsibility that we have for those who have lived wonderful lives and still are living wonderful lives that we can all learn from.
Well, thank you so much for all you do every day. Let's just do more.
Mr. Argentum, did you have anything to add?
All right, I want to thank Ranking Member Gillibrand for being here. I want to thank my fellow senators for being here. I thank our witnesses and the audience. Yeah, I think all of us can picture somebody in our lives that, has gone through loneliness, whether it's a family member or somebody you've seen along the trail or something, and it's tough. So it's important that we figure out how to recommit, to figure out how to get this done. There's some things that the private sector can do, our families can do, our friends can do, and there's some things government can do. We've got to figure out how to do all those things in a manner that has an impact. So thanks everybody for being here. I look forward to continuing to work with members across the aisle and down the dais on this very important topic. If any senators have additional questions for the witnesses or statements to be added, the hearing record will be open until next Wednesday at 5 p.m. I want to thank everybody for being here.